Hey everybody, this is Nick from Android Headlines, and this is the Nexus 5X. Alright, so the Nexus 5X is one of two new Nexus phones that Google is coming out with this year. This one is made by LG, the same manufacturer that made the Nexus 4 and Nexus 5, so now we're on the third generation of Nexus phone from LG. This is going to be the cheaper of the two Nexus phones. It's going to be $379 for the 16 gig and $429 for the 32 gig. There's no expandable storage on these models, so make sure you get plenty of storage when you order it. It's going to come in white, black, and a nice looking ice blue that's sort of a bluish greenish color. It's noticeably larger than the Nexus 5, which is kind of unfortunate because a lot of people who were looking forward to this phone were ones that really like smaller phones in general. The Nexus 5X, though, is still smaller than other flagships, which I suppose is the point of the device in the first place. So those who are uncomfortable with 5.5-inch or larger devices will definitely find this more comfortable than those. The Nexus 5X has a plastic build with an eggshell back. Now that's an eggshell texture, not a color, although the white one does sort of look like an eggshell color. It's sort of a ceramic-y, harder plastic feel than the rest of the body. It comes in at a super light 136 grams. In fact, it almost feels too light sometimes. On the right side, you're going to have some pretty non-distinct volume rocker and power keys. They're both smooth instead of being textured, so sometimes it's a little difficult to figure out which one's which. However, I really like the placement because when you hold it up to your ear when you're on the phone, the volume rocker is right where your thumb rests, which is a very handy thing, especially if you're holding it in your right hand. On the bottom, you're going to find a headset jack and a brand new USB Type-C port. It's nice that LG put these both on the bottom because if you want to charge and listen to music, you can plug them in at the same time and they're coming out of one side of the phone instead of two. Now don't forget to get those new cables because this one only comes with a USB Type-C port and cable. So the cable is a USB Type-C to Type-C. That's Type-C on both ends if you didn't get that. So that means only the charger in the box is going to work unless you have other Type-C chargers. What's great about this charger though is that it's a brand new 15-watt charger using Intel's ultra-fast charging standard. That means that this one's going to go from 0 to 100 in under an hour. It was pretty impressive to say the least, and if you just need a couple of hours of juice, you can plug it in for a few minutes and you're going to get to that point. Now remember, since this is Intel standard and not Qualcomm's, it probably won't work with your current fast chargers, although your mileage may vary on this one, as we found a few that did still work pretty well. On the front, you're going to find a brand new 5.2-inch 1080p display. That's 0.2 inches larger than the Nexus 5. It's a decent all-around display, but nothing really special. It's got decent brightness levels, okay contrast. At the very least, it's got very accurate color. So it's also a Gorilla Glass 3 panel, unlike the Nexus 6P, which is Gorilla Glass 4. Curiously enough, I scratched the Nexus 6P and not the 5X, so take that with what you will. Under the hood is the Snapdragon 808 1.8 GHz hexa-core processor. That's the same processor you're going to find in the LG G4, which is certainly no coincidence. Now, while this is less powerful than the 810 in the Nexus 6P, it doesn't have to throttle or get particularly hot like the 810 does. And I found that in everyday performance, it was really nothing short of excellent. The phone was super zippy and did a really great job in general of launching apps quickly, running games quickly, basically doing whatever you want in the time that you want it to. The encrypted storage makes it a little bit slower than the original Nexus 5 in some tasks, especially if you never encrypted that Nexus 5, but you likely won't notice it when you're just using the phone and not comparing it to other phones. 2 gigs of RAM inside means decent multitasking, although I found that apps did have to reload more often than on the Nexus 6P. There's a 2700 mAh battery inside, and I found that the results were pretty inconsistent. One day I had nearly 8 hours of screen on time, which was rather insane. I was basically testing the heck out of this thing, and I just ran it hour after hour after hour. Other days when I use it in a more regular type of setting where I would browse the web, chat, listen to music, whatever during the day, I often couldn't get more than 3 hours of on-screen time with moderate use, while still keeping it alive all the way until bedtime. There's band support for nearly every carrier in existence, and there's even 3 different models around the world depending on which region you live. I found that call quality is excellent and the speaker on the 5X is fantastic. It's really, really loud and clear. Sound was better than a lot of phones, the back or bottom facing speakers. A lot of phones like to put the speaker in a really awkward place. This one actually has a single front facing speaker at the bottom, which is sort of unfortunate as the Nexus 6P has stereo front facing speakers. And this one is not particularly bassy like the Nexus 6P's is. It sounds a little more hollow and tinny, although it is loud, so if you want to get the point across and have sound playing through it, it definitely works. And again, it's better than a lot of other flagships that have a back or bottom speaker. Android 6.0 Marshmallow makes its debut here alongside the Nexus 6P. There's tons of new security features, including app permissions, which include better ways to monitor an app's usage of your phone, basically your battery, storage, data. There's a whole bunch of things that Google added in here to make it easy to figure out which of those rogue apps is being a pain and taking up all your stuff. App permissions also mean that you can allow or deny a specific permission on an app. So if you don't want an app tracking you on your GPS location or accessing your contacts, you can allow or deny that on an individual basis now. Google Now on Tap is probably the biggest new feature that's been publicized for Android 6.0 Marshmallow. It's more or less a quick version of Google Now for whatever's on your screen. So let's say you have a friend texting you, hey, let's meet up at such and such place. You can just hold down the home button, and theoretically Google Now on Tap will read the screen and tell you the directions and the location and maybe even the menu if you're lucky of this place. This is really great because now you don't have to copy paste, you don't have to click a link to go to another app. Google Now on Tap theoretically should just get all this information and curate it in one simple spot. I found that it's a little hit or miss right now, but of course, this is a brand new feature, and sometimes these things just take a little while to build out. There's better voice integration and conversation with apps via Google Now. So if you ask Google Now a question and it pertains to an app, sometimes the app can respond if the app developer built it into it. There's brand new backup and restore functionality that will now upload all of your app data to the cloud as long as the app supports it. So when you restore or move to a new phone, all of that data comes with you instead of having to re-download it and redo all of it again. One of the biggest highlights of the 6P and the 5X is the official fingerprint scanning support that comes with Android 6.0 Marshmallow. Now, functionality is going to basically be limited to Android Pay and the lock screen at this point. However, this is probably going to be implemented in other apps very soon, given that Marshmallow has official fingerprint scanning support. The Nexus imprint on the back is a very interesting placement that I rather liked. Put your index finger here very easily, or maybe one of your other fingers that are sitting there. It's a great placement because you're already holding the phone like that. No matter which hand you use, right or left, your index finger still pretty much sits in the same place. I found that the fingerprint scanner was super accurate and fast. If I lifted my finger too fast, I found sometimes that it wouldn't read, but I found that this is much more accurate and quick than a lot of other fingerprint scanners on the market. Moving on to the camera, so a lot of people always have the misperception that Nexus cameras are garbage. While I'm not here to argue that, I am here to say that the camera on the Nexus 5X is phenomenal. It's missing a lot of features versus Samsung or LG's other phones, but if you're just looking for a simple point and shoot that does a darn good job, this is where you're going to look. The new interface on the camera software looks a lot like the OnePlus 2's, and overall it definitely looks like an iPhone software, which is a positive or negative depending on how you look at it. But in general, it's a good layout of the software. It only looks like the iPhone software, it doesn't behave like it. So pictures and video are one swipe away at all times. Advanced modes are going to be found in that settings menu on the left-hand side. And of course, you have a bunch of different options on the top, including slow-mo video and flash and Hdr Plus and some other things as well. Speaking of Hdr Plus, Auto Hdr Plus makes a debut here. Unfortunately though, it seems to bias a bit too much on auto mode, which means that taking pictures is going to be instant without any extra processing. However, I really wish that Google would have pushed a little harder towards Hdr Plus mode, because it makes the quality of the pictures rise significantly. In fact, in my testing, you really should just keep HDR Plus on all the time unless you absolutely need to take a ton of fast pictures all at once. I found that when using HDR Plus, the shutter speed is instant, and it really is just processing that takes a fraction of a second most of the time. So you have your initial ring right after you click the shutter button, and then it goes into a processing mode behind the scenes. I never found that when taking a picture I got blur, even when taking pictures of my toddler, which isn't exactly an easy task to do. The camera was amazing in low light in particular. In fact, I found that it saw more than my eyes could see at times, which is pretty incredible. That's all thanks to the brand new Sony IMX377 sensor. That's got 1.55 micron pixels. That's about 30 or 40% bigger than the pixels in most 12 or 13 megapixel sensors. So you're talking a 30 to 40% increase in available light to the sensor, which again means incredible low light shots. Unfortunately, there's no burst mode or any advanced mode like that on the 5X. Although, again, the shutter speed is instant, so as long as you can tap your finger pretty quickly, it's okay. And I also found that because there's no burst mode, you can actually prime the HDR shutter, which is awesome, because you can just hold down the button, wait till the shot is right, let it go, and then you got it. Front-facing camera is considerably improved from previous generation of Nexus phones. You not only have a wide-angle lens, but you have a much higher quality sensor, And there's even HDR Plus support here for taking out those blown out highlights behind you when you're trying to take crazy selfies. There's 4K recording here in all its glory, although there is no optical image stabilization or digital image stabilization of any kind, so riding on bikes and using this as an action camera is probably not going to be advised. There is also 120 frames a second slow motion recording in 720p, so you're going to have good quality slow motion video, although it's not super slow motion video. Overall, the Nexus 5X is really a fantastic device that is worthy of the Nexus name. It's not going to be for everyone, but Android purists in particular that are in search for a smaller phone and one with an amazing camera will definitely be happy. Check out the full review on the site for additional information, and don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Google+, wherever you are, we are. Thanks for watching. Until next time.